Good morning, Sean Campus. Welcome to our Money Monday and our Reading and Thinking Grow Rich. So, this is our new book that we're reading. The book isn't new, but this is our new book. All right, so we're going to pick up where we left off. Slide Disguises of Opportunity. When the opportunity came, it appeared in a different form and from a different direction than Barnes had expected. That is one of the tricks of opportunity. It has a sly habit of slipping in by the back door, and often it comes disguised in the form of misfortune or temporary defeat. Perhaps this is why so many fail to recognize opportunity. Mr. Edison had just perfected a new office device, known at the time as the Edison dictating machine. His salesmen were not enthusiastic over the machine. They did not believe it could be sold without great effort. Barnes saw his opportunity. It had crawled in quietly, hidden in a queer looking machine which interested no one but Barnes and the inventor. Barnes knew he could sell the Edison dictating machine. He suggested that this to Edison and promptly got his chance. He did sell the machine. In fact, he sold it so successfully that Edison gave him a contract to distribute and market it all over the nation. Out of that business association, Barnes made himself rich in money, but he did something infinitely greater. He proved that one really may think and grow rich. How much actual cash that original desire of Barnes was worth to turn, I have no way of knowing. Perhaps it brought him $2 or $3 million, but the amount, whatever it is, becomes insignificant when it is compared with the greater asset he acquired in the form of definite knowledge then that an intangible impulse of thought can be transmuted into material rewards by the application of known principles. This is actually interesting because when I hear the word principles, I think if we know a principle, then we have a master key because it cannot be changed. All right. So Barnes literally thought himself into a partnership with the great Edison. He thought himself into a fortune. He had nothing to start with except the capacity to know that he wanted what he wanted and that the determination to stand by desire until he realized it. 3 feet from gold. One of the most common causes of failure is the habit of quitting when one is overtaken by temporary defeat. Every person is guilty of this mistake at one time or another. An uncle of R.U. Darby was caught by the gold fever in the gold rush days and went went west to dig and grow rich. He had never heard the more gold has been mined from the thoughts of men than has ever been taken from the earth. He staked a claim and went to work with pick and shovel. After weeks of labor, he was rewarded by the discovery of the shining ore. He needed machinery to bring the ore to the surface. Quietly, he covered up the mine, retracted his footsteps to his home in Williamsburg, Maryland, told his relatives and a few neighbors of the strike. They got together money for the needed machinery and had it shipped. The uncle and Darby went back to work the mine. The first car of ore was mined and shipped to a smelter. The returns proved they had one of the richest mines in Colorado. A few more cars of that ore would clear the debts. Then would come the big killing and profits. Down went the drills, up went the hopes of Darby and Uncle. Then something happened. The vein of gold ore disappeared. They had come to the end of the rainbow, and the pot of gold was no longer there. They drilled on, desperately trying to pick up the vein again, all to no avail. Finally, they decided to quit. They sold the machinery to a junk man for a few $100s and took the train back home. The junk man called in a mining engineer to look at the mine and do a little calculating. The engineer advised that the project had failed because the owners were not familiar with the fault lines. His calculations showed that the vein would be found just 3 feet from where the Darbys had stopped drilling. This is exactly where it was found. The junkman took millions of dollars in ore from the mine because he knew enough to seek expert counsel before giving up. I will never stop because men say no. Long afterwards, Mr. Darby recouped his loss many times over when he had made the discovery that desire can be transmuted into gold. The discovery came after he went into the business of selling life insurance. So I'm going to highlight this part too. Desire can be transmuted into gold. Remembering that he lost a huge fortune because he stopped 3 feet from gold, Darby profited by the experience in his chosen work. By the simple method of saying to himself, I stopped 3 feet from gold, but I will never stop because men say no. When I asked them to buy insurance, Darby became one of a small group of men who sell over $1 million in life insurance annually. He owed his stickability to the lesson he learned from his quotability, his quitability in the gold mining business. Before success comes in any man's life, he is sure to meet with much temporary defeat and perhaps some failure. When defeat overtakes a man, the easiest and most logical thing to do is to quit. That is exactly what the majority of men do. More than 500 of the most successful men in this country has ever known told the author their greatest success came just one step beyond the point at which defeat had overtaken them. Failure is a trickster with a keen sense of irony and cunning. It takes great delight, great delight in tripping one when success is almost within reach. A 50-cent lesson in persistence. Shortly after Mr. Darby received his degree from the University of Hard Knocks and had decided to profit by his experience in the gold mining business, he had the good fortune to be present on an occasion that proved to him that no does not necessarily mean no. One afternoon, he was helping his uncle grind wheat in an old fashioned mill. The uncle operated a large farm on which a number of colored sharecrop farms lived. Quietly, the door was opened, and a small colored child, the daughter of a tenant, walked in and took her place near the door. The uncle looked up, saw the child, and barked at her roughly. What do you want? Meekly, the child replied, My mammy say, send her 50 cents. I'll not do it, the uncle retorted. Now you run on home. Yes, say, the child replied, but she did not move. The uncle went ahead with his work so busily engaged that he did not pay enough attention to the child to observe that she did not leave. When she looked up and saw her still, st- when he looked up and saw her still standing there, he yelled at her, "I told you go on home. Now go, or I'll take a switch to you." The little girl said, "Yes, sir," but she did not budge. The uncle dropped a sack of grain he was about to pour into the mill hopper, picked up a barrel stave, and started toward the child with an expression on his face that indicated trouble. Darby held his breath. He was certain he was about to witness an assault. He knew his uncle had a fierce temper. When the uncle reached the spot where the child was standing, she quickly stepped forward one step, looked up into his eyes, and screamed at the top of her shrill voice, My mammy's gotta have the 50 cents. The uncle stopped, looked at her for a minute, then slowly said, then slowly laid the barrel stave on the floor, put his hand in his pocket, took out a $50 and gave it to her. The child took the money and slowly backed toward the door, never taking his eyes off the man whom she had just conquered. After she had gone, the uncle sat down on a box and looked out the window into a space for more than 10 minutes. He was pondering with awe over the whipping he had just taken. Mr. Darby, too, was doing some thinking. That was the first time in all his experiences that he had seen a colored child deliberately master an adult white person. How did she do it? What happened to his uncle that caused him to lose his fierceness and become as docile as a lamb? What strange power did the child use that made her master of the situation? These and other similar questions flashed into Darby's mind, but he did not find the answer until years later when he told me the story. Strangely, the story of this unusual experience was told to the author on in the old mill, on the very spot where the uncle took his whipping. The strange power of a child. As we stood there in the musty old mill, Mr. Darby repeated the story of the unusual conquest and finished by asking, "What can you make of it? What strange power did the child use that so completely whipped my uncle?" The answer to his question, will be found in the principles described in this book. The answer is full and complete. It contains details and instructions sufficient to enable anyone to understand and apply the same force which the little child accidentally stumbled upon. Keep your mind alert, and you will observe exactly what strange power came to the rescue of the child. You will catch a glimpse of this power in the next chapter. Somewhere in the book you will find an idea that will quicken your receptive powers and place at your command for your own benefit this same irresistible power. The awareness of this power may come to you in the first chapter, or it may flash into your mind in some subsequent chapter. It may come in the form of a single idea, or it may come in the nature of a plan or in a purpose. Again, it may cause you to go back into your past experiences of failure or defeat and bring to surface some lesson by which you can regain all that you lost through defeat. After I had described to Mr. Darby the power unwittingly used by the little colored child, he quickly retraced his 30 years of experience as a life insurance salesman and frankly acknowledged that his success in that field was due in no small degree to the lesson he had learned from the child. Mr. Darby pointed out, every time a prospect tried to bow me out without buying, I saw the child standing there in the old mill, her big eyes glaring in defiance, and I said to myself, I've got to make this sale. The better portion of all sales I have made were made after people had said no. He recalled, too, his mistake in having stopped only 3 feet from the goal. But, he said, that experience was a blessing in disguise. It taught me to keep on keeping on, no matter how hard the going may be. A lesson I needed to learn before could succeed in anything. So keep on keeping on, no matter what has happened. But what's important, I think, is the highlight of acknowledging that the hard situation needed to happen, right? So no matter how hard something's going to be, it's a lesson that I needed to learn before I could succeed at anything. The story of of Mr. Darby and his uncle, the child and the gold mine, doubtless will be read by hundreds of men who make their living by selling life insurance. And to all of these, the author wishes to offer the suggestion that Darby owes to these two experiences his ability to sell more than $1 million of life insurance every year. Mr. Darby's experiences were commonplace and simple enough, yet they yield the answer to his destiny in life. Therefore, they were as important to him as life itself. He profited by these two dramatic experiences because he analyzed them and found the lessons they taught. But what of the man who has neither the time nor the inclination to study failure in search of knowledge that may lead to success? Where and how is he to learn the art of converting defeat into stepping stones to opportunity? In, in answer to these questions, this book was written. So, one sound idea is all you need. So, this is the last section that I'll read, and then our time will be up. The answer called for a description of 13 principles, but Remember, as you read, the answer you may be seeking to the questions which have caused you to ponder over the strangeness of life may be found in your own mind through some idea, plan, or purpose which may spring into your mind as you read. One sound idea is all that one needs to achieve success. The principles described in this book contain ways and means of creating useful ideas. Before we go any further in our approach to the description of these principles, we believe you are entitled to receive this important suggestion. When riches begin to come, they come so quickly in such great abundance that one wonders where they have been hiding during all these lean years. This is an astounding statement, and all the more so when we take into consideration the popular belief that riches come only to those who work hard and long. When you begin to think and grow rich, you will observe that riches begin with a state of mind, with definiteness of purpose, with little or no hard work. You and every other person ought to be interested in knowing how to acquire that state of mind which will attract riches. I spent 25 years in research because I, too, wanted to know how wealthy men become that way. Observe very closely as soon as you master the principles of this philosophy and begin to follow the instructions for applying these principles. Your financial status will begin to improve, and everything you touch will begin to transmute itself into an asset for your benefit. Impossible? Not at all. One of the main weaknesses of mankind is the average man's familiarity with the word impossible. He knows all the rules which will not work. He knows all the things which cannot be done. This book was written for those who seek the rules which have made others successful and are willing to stake everything on those rules. Success came to those who become success conscious. Success come to those who become success conscious. Failure comes to those who indifferently allow themselves to become failure conscious. The object of this book is to help all who seek it to learn the art of changing their minds from failure consciousness to success consciousness. Another weakness found in altogether too many people is the habit of measuring everything and everyone by their own impressions and beliefs. Some persons who read this will believe that they cannot think and grow rich because their thought habits have been steeped in poverty, want, misery, failure, and defeat. These unfortunate people remind me of a prominent Chinese who came to America to be educated in American ways. He attended the University of Chicago. One day, President Harper met the young Oriental on the campus, stopped to chat with him for a few minutes, and asked what had impressed him as being the most noticeable characteristic of the American people. Why? The student exclaimed, "The queer slant of your eyes are off slant." What do we say about the Chinese? We refuse to believe that which we do not understand. We foolishly believe that our own limitations are the proper measure of limitations. Sure, the other fellow's eyes are off slant because they are not the same as our own. All right, so we'll stop there and um, pick back up next week.